Hello students, in this video we are going to look at Sonnet 30 by William Shakespeare. So have you ever sat quietly and found yourself suddenly flooded with old memories? That nostalgic feeling? Losses you thought that you'd moved on from, people you have missed, regrets you thought were buried. Shakespeare wrote a sonnet about exactly that feeling, and he did it in 14 lines. So this today we are breaking it down simply, clearly, and fully. So you understand not just what it says, but why it still matters. So let's begin with the poet himself, William Shakespeare, poet and playwright, born in 1564, Stafford upon Avon, England, playwright, actor, and poet. Most people know him for his plays Hamlet, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, but Shakespeare also wrote 154 sonnets, short 14-line poems that are some of the most intimate writings he ever produced. Sonnet 30 comes from his collection, from this collection, published in 1609. It's addressed to a mysterious figure called the Fair Youth, a beloved friend whose presence at the end of the poem changes everything. The poem, let's hear the poem first and then we'll go through it together. So what's the big idea? So before we go line by line, here's the poem's core idea in one sentence. Memory brings grief, but thinking of friends makes it all go away. That's it. The whole poem is structured around that turn. Grief builds, 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 but one thought dissolves it entirely. Shakespeare stretches the pain across 12 lines so that the final two lines, called the couplet, hit like a wave of relief. So, we'll start with the first stanza, the quatrain, the courtroom of the mind. When to the sessions of sweet silent thought I summon up remembrance of things past. Shakespeare opens up with a legal metaphor. Sessions here refer to court hearings. They're court sessions basically. So the summon is court summons, when the court calls you for hearings. So summon is what you do to witnesses. In quiet moments, the speaker puts his memories on trial, calling them up one by one. What does he find? Regret. I sigh the lack of many a thing I thought, things he wanted but never got, and the old woes new veil, old sorrows feel brand new again. So this extended metaphor of a legal courtroom language is throughout the poem. So let's go to the second quatrain, the grief for the dead. Now the emotion deepens. He weeps and he specifies these are tears for our precious friend, hid in death's dateless night. Dateless night is a beautiful, simple phrase. It means endless, eternal darkness, death. These are friends who have gone forever. He also mourns love's long since cancelled love. A relationship that ended perhaps bitterly, a breakup basically. So the mood here is one of accumulated loss. Every memory adds another weight. Death's a dateless night, this sort of eternal or finality of death that he gives through his words. So let's move on to the fourth quatrain, grieving grief itself. His stanza goes ever deeper. He is now grieving over griefs he's already grieved before. He from woe to woe tell over the sad account of before bemoaned moan. It sounds almost absurd, mourning for own mourning, but it's psychologically real. We have all reopened our old wounds and felt the pain as fresh as the first time. The word account carries financial language. Like a debt he kept repaying, the losses feel like they never really truly settled. So it's like a debt that we keep paying, but it never gets paid. So he feels like it is just a continuous thing, and it just doubles down every time he recalls these grief, uh, gr- grief-filled moments. Then we come to the final couplet, the turn. But if the while I think on thee, dear friend, all losses are restored and sorrows end. This is a, on a positive end that he ends with this couplet. Everything changes in one word, but. That single conjunction is called the volta, Italian for turn. So it's a completely pivot point of the sonnet. After 12 lines of building grief, two lines of warmth dismantle all of it. All of this negativity that builds up, all the grief and the pain that builds up, is dissolved in a moment, in these two lines, this couplet. The friend doesn't do anything dramatic. The speaker speaks, simply thinks of them, and that is enough. Every loss is restored, every sorrow ends. So let us look at a few um, major themes that you see here. Of course, the major theme is memory and grief. Memory is not a comfort here, it's a source of pain. Quiet reflection reopens old wounds rather than healing them. This is something many readers instantly recognize. Friendship as salvation. The friend at the end isn't described physically or even named. Yet their presence, just the thought of them, is powerful enough to reverse all the emotional damage of the poem. Friendship here is almost miraculous. Time and loss. The poem is obsessed with things that are past, cancelled, vanished, gone, the failures that have gone by. So Shakespeare is meditating on the nature of time, how it takes things from us, and how human connection is the only answer to that loss. So let us look at the form of the poem. Of course, it's a sonnet, so it's a 14-line poem of Shakespeare. Sonnet 30 is a Shakespearean sonnet, three quatrains or four-line stanzas, plus a closing couplet of two lines. So the rhyme scheme is A B A B, C D C D, E F E F, G G. This is how the rhyme scheme goes through the complete structure of the poem. Then the meter that was followed was iambic pentameter, 10 syllables per line, alternating unstressed and stressed beats, stressed syllables. It creates a natural speech like rhythm. And then you have the extended metaphor of the courtroom, legal imagery and legal jargon runs throughout the poem. And then the financial metaphor, losses, accounts, payment, cancelled, grief as debt. So all of these figure, this financial metaphor also figures in the poem. And then the volta, the turn, the dramatic turn. But if, okay, in the couplet, where he all of his grief is just vanished, okay. And then you have repetition also. Woe is repeated, grief is repeated, and then moan is repeated, to build an emotional sort of weight. The heaviness that the speaker here is going through is expressed through these repetitions of these words. And then Sonnet 30 was written over 400 years ago, and yet anyone who has ever lain awake at night replaying regrets, regrets exactly what knows exactly what Shakespeare is describing. Anyone who has felt that sting of old grief um, arrive unexpectedly, fresh as if brand new, has lived inside this poem. We all have gone through those moments where we re experience the trauma or pain or the heartbreak that, that has happened in the past, and we relive that through our memories. And sometimes it is not healing, and then we do not go through it, and only time actually heals it. But sometimes when these memories come up, we end up re-experiencing the whole grief and crying even. So anyone who has found that one person, one friendship, that one positive influence in your life that makes the weight lift, they understand the couplet completely. That's why we still read Shakespeare, not because he's old, but because he's accurate about human experience. That these are some things that we all experience in our lives. So we will look at key things that we need to take away from this poem. Memory brings old grief alive, but thinking of a beloved friend restores everything. And sonnet, which is a 14 line poem, quatrain is a 4 line stanza, and couplet is 2 line ending, volta is the turn, and iambic pentameter is the rhythmic pattern used in this poem. And I will leave you a few questions. How does Shakespeare use legal and financial metaphors to describe grief in Sonnet 30? How what role does friendship play in the poem? And why does Shakespeare leave the friend unnamed? How does the structure of the Shakespearean sonnet, building to the couplet, shape the emotional experience of the reader? So, all losses are restored and sorrows end, is what the speaker says. 14 words, 400 years, still true. That's the power of a great sonnet, and that's Sonnet 30. I hope you understood and like this video. Um, Greetings until next time.